Welcome to the Disrupting Obesity podcast. I'm Charlotte Skanes, and I'll be sharing ways to regain control over your body and lose an extreme amount of weight naturally. Being fat is about so much more than just the food. It's about your relationship with food. That means that dealing with your weight is about more than just the food too. You have to change that relationship. You have to start disrupting obesity. I've never done this before, and it hadn't occurred to me until you Flamingos suggested it. I also love that this is Ask Whatever number 20, and we're trying something new. Today, we're doing the first ever Happy Bottom Bonanza, a whole episode devoted to Gladys and her shenanigans. I even wore a special shirt. First up, we're going to do a supercut compilation of the Good For You Gladys question of the week. And then I'm going to chime back in with some brand new answers to the Gladyses in my life's most pressing issues. My plan was to do one big Happy Bottom episode, but it was way too long. So I've split it in two. And next week, we're going to do the second half of the supercut, plus 3 more brand new GFY Gladyses. It's kind of nice clearing the nonsense and the trolling from my spreadsheet anyway, so why not? We're going to go back to the very beginning with our first ever GFY Gladys. It came from episode number 42, Ask Whatever number 9, and I really did kick things off with a good one. We've got a fear-mongering Gladys or two, and a Gladys who thinks I'm just making it all up, plus 3 brand new Gladyses tootling along in the Happy Bottom parade. I'm going to talk to you about how going viral was an unexpected Gladys goldmine, and I surprised myself with 2 out of 3 of the new questions because one of them is something I told myself I would not talk about, and the other one isn't even from the list. It's from my personal life. So make sure you stick around for those. Let's get started with all the Gladyses we've known and loved so far. This first one, I think, is quite the little gem, and it wasn't even on a post of mine. This super happy Gladys decided to come for me while I was encouraging somebody else. Yeah. The original poster had done a reel where she was talking about how she was struggling since she put on most of the weight that she'd lost. So I commented, just sharing that I gained back over 100 of the pounds that I lost the first time. And I was just, commiserating with her because it sucks and it's really hard. And up popped Gladys. So she led with, and this is a direct quote, "Genuinely curious. How do you gain 115 pounds? I'm struggling to gain 5. And I'm struggling to understand what you're doing engaging with posts for obese people. I'm genuinely struggling to believe that you're curious and not just mean-spirited and rude. I don't do baiting, but I couldn't let that stand either. So here's what I told her. I regained it the same way I ended up 200 pounds overweight, overeating. I experienced some horrible loss, and I just didn't care anymore. I knew I was getting bigger, but I was so emotionally distraught that I just couldn't stop eating. The way I deal with this kind of Gladys is the same as all the others, just the truth, right? I'm not ashamed of who I am or where I was, and I'm not going to let other people who read her Good For You Gladys question of the week think that they should be ashamed of themselves either. But here's the great news. Gladys has inspired me to create this entire new segment, the Good For You Gladys question of the week, and the secret to the sauce is the GFY. Speaking of Gladys, she loves a bunch of variations on this little nugget. Why would you risk the chemicals in the sugar-free version? And that's the most positive take I've got on that question because let me tell you, the comment section gets fun anytime I use products with artificial sweeteners in them. The super short answer is that I risk it because the minimal exposure to those chemicals is better for me than being 200 pounds overweight. I can expand on it, but really that's the only answer that matters. The complications and potential comorbidities of obesity massively outstrip the dangers Gladys is so worried about. You need to take in significant amounts of this stuff to jeopardize yourself. I'm not a rat or a mouse being, force-fed aspartame through a tube around the clock in a lab somewhere. I'm somebody who eats it every so often. It's going to be fine. And when you're losing weight, using the horrible, horrible chemicals is a better alternative to staying obese. They're a tool. And maybe they're a risk. Okay, fine. Morbid obesity is a guarantee. Well, that was a fun little foray into some of the negativity. And I address it because I feel like I need to. I know I want to keep things positive, but part of being positive for me is combating the shaming that's trying to pass itself off as helpful information sharing, right? There are a lot of anti-sweetener people out there who use bullying tactics that confuse people. And these are people who are already neck deep at conflicting information. So sometimes when I talk about negative things or negative people, it's my way to bring some positive to the table. Speaking of Gladys, our 10th question on our 10th Ask Whatever episode is going to the Good For You Gladys question of the week. Now, she opened with a classic move. You might remember that our first inaugural GFY Gladys question of the week opened with genuinely curious. And then she went on to show that she wasn't actually curious. She was just being a passive-aggressive dick. Anytime someone has to insert just how earnest they're being, it's probably going to be an issue. Like that notorious liar who starts every third sentence with, honestly. Okay, so this week's winner, Gladys, she rolled up with a classic. No disrespect. And I think we all know how that's going to go. She might as well have led with I don't want to hurt your feelings or no offense. Yeah. The problem with all of those super cute little clauses is that the next word is inevitably going to be but. And here's the thing with but. And it's the reason I so very rarely use that word. Go back and listen. Go back and look for it. It's super rare. And when I use it, it's for effect. And a very deliberate choice on my part. Anytime we hear the word but, we're conditioned to negate everything the person said right before it. I love you, but that was awesome. But yeah. All those lovely, happy feelings just evaporate. They're gone into thin air, and all you're left with is whatever came after the but. I'm waiting to get the ultimate Gladys comment. Dear Charlotte, no offense, but I'm genuinely curious, and I don't want to hurt your feelings, but yeah, good grief. Okay. So over sidles Gladys, and she's like, no disrespect, but I've looked at your pictures and I think you must have carried your weight really well. And you don't seem to have very much loose skin now. So I'm just wondering. Yeah, so I've been waiting for this. Couple of things, Glads. So I didn't let anyone take my picture after a certain point. As in, there's a years-long gap in my life where pictures just don't exist. And you could do that back then. Disappear to the kitchen or the bathroom when it was picture time. Volunteer to take the picture. Just flat out hide. There were lots of tricks. Our phones didn't have cameras. Cameras were still a thing. Film. Actual rolls of film that you had to go get developed were dominating the landscape. I got a digital camera for my bridal shower, and it was a big deal. We had disposable cameras, right? Which were also a thing. We put them on the tables at our wedding. But it was pretty easy to do, right? You could avoid having your picture taken if you wanted to. I've got my student ID from university and my old driver's licenses, and there's a period where that's it for a while. So there's that. I do like to agree with a Gladys wherever possible, right? I do like to keep things as positive as I possibly can, and she's right. I carry my weight exceptionally well. I gain weight everywhere and I lose it pretty evenly. I'm super lucky. Super lucky. I didn't carry it all in one place, like my legs or my stomach. It was everywhere. I stayed proportional. Super lucky. Even now, I get people who don't believe I weigh 137 pounds. I've had to get on the scale to prove it. And yes, not a lot of loose skin. A couple of things going on there too. One, I lost my weight gradually, consistently gradually. Like I didn't have months where I dropped 50 pounds. That never happened for me. It was a slow, steady grind the whole way through. I moisturized like crazy. And I didn't use fancy, expensive creams either. I bought a half a dozen bottles of stuff that I really liked the smell of out of a clearance cart in a Walmart. I stayed hydrated, and I've got amazing genes when it comes to skin. I've had a couple plastic surgeons tell me that I have about half as much loose skin as they would expect from someone who's lost as much weight as I have. Most of that is attributable to genetics. 2, I'm not sure what you're using to gauge it. Like, how the fuck do you know, Gladys? All those half-naked pictures I'm posting? You must be new here. I like long puff sleeves and compression garments. I can count on one hand the number of adults who've seen me in shorts or a tank top, unless that tank top's hanging out the bottom of a shirt, because I definitely don't do crop tops. And you're absolutely new here if you think it's a self-esteem thing. I'm an adult, and I'm allowed to decide how the world gets to see my body. I feel no shame about my loose skin that I assure you is very much there. But a lack of shame doesn't mean I have to like it, and it doesn't mean I have to show it to you. Just like you're allowed to imply that I didn't lose my weight, I'm allowed to not like part of my body, but still feel very good about myself. Now, this one wasn't actually a question, but I'm not going to let that stop me, because I haven't used pineapples in a recipe for a while, but that's not stopping them because somehow they keep finding the fluff one and getting torqued up about it. Okay, so Gladys mustered up her disgust and she goes, but isn't pineapple along with the syrup full of sugar? And then she put a shrug emoji. After resisting the urge to use the eye roll emoji and just ignoring her bullshit, I thought about it for a while. Because the demonizing of fruit is getting ridiculous. I mean, the whole premise is ridiculous, right? But this vilification is pretty absurd. I can't for the life of me understand why anyone would discourage someone who is trying to get a grip on obesity from eating fruit. It's not the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and it is a long list, but this one is up there. It's up there. Fruit is not the enemy. Sugar isn't the enemy. It's not about the food. It's definitely not about the fruit. This one was upset with my ingredients. New Gladys, same old complaint. There is a lot wrong with processed foods. And I know she was upset because she capitalized the a lot part. I get it. Processed foods can be scary, and some of them are. There definitely are things out there that are being called food that are more chemical than they are anything else. And I'm not a big fan of them. But I get so frustrated with the shaming on this one because it's just throwing up another barrier. It's making it that much harder for people who want to do something about their weight to feel like they can. And I hate the barriers. I hate the exercise myth barriers. I hate all the food barriers. The one where you have to cook your own food to lose weight, where you can't have any added sugars, where you have to track or eliminate all your macros. No processed foods, no dairy, only food grown by left-handed farmers. It's all horseshit. It's just barrier building. And why anybody who purports to be helping people to lose weight would be throwing up those kind of walls and alienating people is completely beyond me. And yeah, I do know that I'm saying that in a good for you Gladys segment, but I'm fine with alienating her. I want her to feel uncomfortable and like she doesn't belong here. She doesn't. All right, so let's do this. Here we go. All foods are processed. You pick it, it's processed. And yeah, I'm being extreme about it, but that's okay. If Gladys can take it to the nth degree, so can I. Washing food, packaging it, cooking it, all processes. Baking is a process. Right? Even handmade sourdough made with hand-milled organic flour. So many processes. Doesn't it ferment? That's a process. Now, I know I'm being ridiculous, but I'm doing it to make a point. I'm pretty sure that most of us know that a carrot and a carrot muffin aren't the same thing. Another Gladys came really hard for me over a muffin recipe, but we're going to deal with that in another episode. I have carrot muffins on the brain. But we know that. We know that. We don't need to be shamed into acknowledging that we're somehow better off if we eat our plain carrot sticks and forget about the muffins. But she's setting up a false choice. And that's why I get so frustrated. This isn't a choice between a carrot and a carrot muffin. It's between a carrot muffin and a chocolate fudge cupcake that they call a muffin because it's so big that it's basically just a muffin-shaped cake, right? That's the choice. So please stop blithering about the fucking carrots. If the choice is a carrot or a chocolate muffin, the muffin is going to win every time. The carrot isn't even part of the conversation. Nobody gives a shit about the carrot when there's a whole bunch of muffins over there. So how about if instead of pimping carrots, we celebrate better choices? There's nothing wrong with a carrot muffin. Mine are around 80 calories, and the chocolate one from Costco, the big chocolate muffin, yeah, those have 600 calories. So stop bitching to me about processed foods and let people make the best choices that they can. At the beginning of today's episode, I promised new Gladys comments and concerns, so here we go. Last November, I had my viral cake mix brownies moment, and it's been a veritable Gladys goldmine. There were a few recurring themes. This Gladys managed to hit on just a couple of them. Full of chemicals. Make them from scratch. Facepalm emoji. Now, I sure am glad that they included the emoji. I'm not sure I would have understood just how far off the rails I'd gone if they hadn't used it. Here's the deal. I used a box of cake mix, just regular cake mix, to make brownies. And I cut 1,000 calories out of the recipe by using Greek yogurt instead of oil. That's it. Clearly, Gladys has an issue with the cake mix. Okay, yeah, processed foods, blah, blah, I know. Except for the part where it's really just all the same shit I would have mixed together if I'd made it from scratch, right? Flour, cocoa, sugar, baking powder, soda, or whichever, salt. I'm not sure how big of a difference it would have made or what your real point is here. But let's say that the cake mix was full of chemicals, which is really arbitrary language, by the way. And when you get right down to it, everything is chemical in nature, but that's not the point that you're trying to make. You mean big, scary chemicals. Fine. Okay. Even if the box mix was full of big, scary chemicals, which it isn't, but even if it was, who cares? I mean, clearly you do, but the whole point of the post was to cut calories to make losing weight easier. Specifically, to cut the calories in something super yummy and keep it yummy. You can make lower calorie versions, but if they're not at least almost as satisfying as the original, there's not much point because you're just going to end up eating something else later. That's not what you're after. It's a bad plan. You want to keep it sustainable. When you overeat, finding things you can overeat for fewer calories is a big win. I never claimed my brownies were healthy. I pointed out that they had fewer calories, 1,000 fewer than the regular version. I do want to address the non-chemical side of making them from scratch, though. It's the time, Gladys. When you're losing a significant amount of weight, there's a lot going on, and you need to save as much time as you can. You also want to make things as easy on yourself as you can, because it's stressful. Hauling out a whack of ingredients is more stress and not as easy as just whipping out a box. It's less time, too. I really hesitated to talk about this one. I'm going to do it anyway, but it's a little raw, and I haven't talked about it because I'm nervous that drawing attention to one Gladys will only draw more Gladyses, and it's not a weight loss issue. This one falls more under the personal attack category than anything else. But I was just having a conversation with a true flamingo in my DMs, and it's given me the courage to do this. My flamingo friend was apologizing for taking up my time. And I hear that from you guys a lot. So I want to say to all of my flamingos, please don't apologize for taking up my or anybody else's time. You're very worthy of it. What I said to her was that she didn't have to apologize because I find it really encouraging to talk to other people who get it. especially since I spend so much time dealing with Gladyses or fending off the brands that want to prey on my following. Which brings us back to the Gladys who I haven't wanted to deal with publicly, and I haven't. My oven broke earlier this year. It's not a huge deal. I've got a microwave and a crock pot and an instant pot that I don't use probably as often as I should, even though my oven is broken. But I've got options. Not having an oven isn't a barrier to food for us. But a huge part of what I do is recipe videos, so not having an oven could kind of be a thing. I posted about it after I decided to not be upset about not having an oven and to try and see it as a chance to challenge myself. I had just started working on my second cookbook, and I was talking to my mom about it, and I was trying to stay positive and grateful because those are just things that I talk about ever since the whole almost dying thing. I try really, really hard to live that way too. I think it keeps me living. And I totally believe that being as positive and grateful as I can gives me more things to be positive and grateful about. So I was like midway through actively choosing to talk about the situation with the broken oven as positively as I could muster with my mom. It had been broken for more than a month at this point, and I'm trying to be cheerful. And I half jokingly, half sarcastically say that I could just pivot with the cookbook and have it be all recipes that don't need an oven. I knew immediately, like as soon as the words left my mouth, that that was why my oven broke, and I've been working on the oven-free cookbook ever since. A big thing for me with the first cookbook was to avoid niche appliances. I didn't want to exclude people just because they can't afford the newest countertop convection oven or an air fryer or whatever. I won my air fryer in a raffle when I was making my first cookbook, and I got obsessed with it really fast. But I didn't use it for any of the recipes because I feel like it's a niche appliance too, and one that I'm really lucky to have. You guys know how I feel about poverty shaming in the weight loss community. I'm not a fan. Poverty shaming is not an air fryer. There's nothing cool about it. But I thought for the second cookbook, I could just do recipes that you don't need an oven for. Not a whole bunch of air fryer recipes because I still think they're a privilege, but just recipes that are simple and really accessible no matter what your access is to appliances. I decided it was such a good idea that I was going to post about it on Instagram. Yeah, we're going to turn some lemons into lemonade, so why not talk about it? And initially, the response was great. Lots of people thought it would be fun. Not everybody has an oven. So having alternatives, especially ones to help with weight loss, seemed like a good idea to you too. But then something happened. This Gladys totally triggered me, and I hadn't realized how much until I sat down and started writing this out. She posited that I was only posting about it because I wanted someone to give me a new oven. My stovetop still works, so it's not like I'm up a creek over here, but her comment just rocked me. I don't think I responded to her. Something I found is that when somebody has already made up their mind like that, there's nothing that I can say to get them to see what's actually going on. So I don't even bother starting the back and forth because it'll just be one accusation after another. And these aren't comments about weight loss. They're about my integrity. So I try to remind myself that obviously this person has made up their mind based on this one post plus my follower count, and they don't actually know what I'm all about. They're assuming, and I'm assuming this here, but I think they're assuming that because of my follower count, I do sponsored posts and take money from brands to talk about or feature their products. And my Flamingos already know that I don't. I haven't done a single sponsored or affiliate post. Not one. Ever. Not a single story. Not a reel. Not a straight up photo where I tag a brand in the caption in exchange for money or products or discounts. Nothing. Not once. Ever. I haven't brought on podcast guests in exchange for money. I won't even turn on the advertising I'm offered through my distributor for this podcast because I don't get to choose precisely which ads they'll run. And yes, I've been called incredibly stupid for these decisions more than once by more than one person. That's fine. Sometimes it feels stupid. But feeling stupid feels better than saying yes to the supplement companies that approach me or the exercise equipment companies that approach me. And obviously they didn't do their research, but saying yes to them would completely go against everything I'm doing here. Money is nice. Not having to feel like an asshat is way nicer. So I say no to everything. There's nothing I've been offered that I lose sleep over having said no to. People who are trying to lose weight are a vulnerable population, and these brands know it. That's why the supplement industry makes billions. They prey on our desperation. If their solutions actually solved anything, maybe it would be different, but they don't, and I can't be part of that. But I also haven't talked about my oven since, or the new cookbook. I guess I didn't want people to think that she was right. I still don't want a free oven. That's not the issue. And I'm still not comfortable talking about this, but I don't endorse anything at this point. If I ever do, it'll be for a damn good reason. I only sell stuff I believe in. And so far, that's only the stuff that I've created myself. So if you see my pictures being used to sell anything, please know that they've been stolen and are being used without my permission. Our final Gladys of the week in our first ever Happy Bottom Bonanza goes to a question I got in person. I was surprised because it came from someone I know, and I really didn't see it coming. I stammered my way through a far less eloquent answer than the one I hope I'm going to give now. But their question basically came down to, did I really think I could make an actual difference? I do. I think I am making a difference. I'm 66 episodes and I can't even begin to guess how many hours into all of this. There are the clients whose lives I've directly impacted. Thousands of you have downloaded my free guide to getting started for the last time. But then there's the time I've actually spent talking with you, having conversations in my DMs, comments, emails. You're telling me the difference I'm making. And every time you do, it pushes me to try just a little bit harder. And I know it's surprising to some of you when you find out that it's actually me and I really do answer. But that connection is the most important part for me. I really do love what I do. And that's the difference that you make for me. When you take the time to let me know I'm making a difference for you, it really does give me a lift and keep me going. And I'm so thankful to each of you who takes the time to do that. This isn't exactly what I would call easy, and it probably makes a lot of sense to talk about this in an episode where I've been talking about the people who seem to go out of their way to be negative. And for the most part, I really don't let them get under my skin. I knew they were coming. Negativity is par for the course on social media generally, and particularly in the weight loss space. I knew negativity would be coming from my private life, for that matter, too. When you're doing courses, any kind of learning on how to launch a podcast or create content for social media or do anything in the online space generally, there's usually a component, and even just in online spaces where creators talk about this stuff, it's a hot topic, but they tell you to expect that your family and friends won't support you. And it can be a hard thing to deal with. I'm super fortunate in that regard. But because I'd been warned that this could happen, I wasn't completely taken off guard when I was reflecting on it later. In the moment, I was pretty stunned, but later I was like, oh, yeah, they did say this was fairly common. But it's definitely very strange when you feel like you're justifying yourself. And I think it's harder to do with people who know you sometimes. Whether I can articulate it or not, I still think that I can make a difference. I feel like I'm getting there. If you need help, oops, I'll have to go back. Sorry, Josh. If you need help getting your weight under control and sorting out your relationship with food, I've got a few options for you. There's my free guide to getting started for the last time. My weight loss workbook Disruptor is available on Amazon. There's the cookbook if you're after some of the recipes that I was talking about today, the cake mix hacks and the pineapple fluff. They're both in there with links to videos so that you can see how I make them. And if you're really ready to get serious, there's the program. That's 53 weeks designed to fundamentally change your relationship with food. Keep trying, keep tracking. Don't be intimidated and don't give up. You've totally got this. And don't forget to tune back in 2 weeks for part 2. We've got 8 more Gladyses blasting back from the past and 3.5 new ones. Thank you for listening to Disrupting Obesity with Charlotte Skanes. If you know it's time to take back control, lose the weight, and keep it off, reach out to me privately with a direct message on Instagram that says ready so you can start disrupting obesity.